our next video looking at Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Again, I'm going to just be reading the beginning of this extract to you. This is from the beginning of Stave 3, in which the ghost of Christmas present appears to Scrooge. Below the video, I'll put the timings so that if you want to jump straight to the analysis, you can. Okay, Stave 3. Awaking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. He felt that he was restored to consciousness in the right nick of time for the especial purpose of holding a conference with the second messenger dispatched to him through Jacob Marley's intervention. But finding that he turned uncomfortably cold when he began to wonder which of his curtains this new spectre would draw back, he put them every one aside with his own hands, and lying down again, established a sharp lookout all round the bed, for he wished to challenge the spirit on the moment of its appearance, and did not wish to be taken by surprise and made nervous. Gentlemen of the free and easy sort, who plume themselves on being acquainted with a move or two and being usually equal to the time of day, express the wide range of their capacity for adventure by observing that they are good for anything, from pitch and toss to manslaughter, between which opposite extremes, no doubt, there lies a tolerably wide and comprehensive range of subjects. Without venturing for Scrooge quite as hardily as this, I don't mind calling on you to believe that he was ready for a good broad field of strange appearances, and that nothing between a baby and a rhinoceros would have astonished him very much. Now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing, and consequently, when the bell struck 1 and no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by, yet nothing came. All this time he lay upon his bed, the very core and centre of a blaze of ruddy light which streamed upon it when the clock proclaimed the hour, and which, being only light, was more alarming than a dozen ghosts, as he was powerless to make out what it meant or would be at, and was sometimes apprehensive that he might be at that very moment an interesting case of spontaneous combustion, without having the consolation of knowing it. At last, however, he began to think, as you or I would have thought at first, for it is always the person not in the predicament who knows what ought to have been done in it, and would unquestionably have done it too. At last, I say, he began to think that the source and secret of this ghostly light might be in the adjoining room, from whence, on further tracing it, it seemed to shine. This idea taking full possession of his mind, he got up softly, and shuffled in his slippers to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by his name, and bade him enter. He obeyed. It was his own room. There was no doubt about that, but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. The crisp leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, as if so many little mirrors had been scattered there, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney as that dull petrification of a hearth had never known in Scrooge's time, or Marley's, or for many and many a winter season gone. Heaped up on the floor, to form a kind of throne, were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense twelfth cakes, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim with their delicious steam. In easy state upon this couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up, high up, to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. "Come in," exclaimed the ghost, "come in, and know me better, man." Scrooge entered timidly, and hung his head before this spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the spirit. "Look upon me." Scrooge reverently did so. It was clothed in one simple green robe or mantle, bordered with white fur. This garment hung so loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. Its feet, observable beneath the ample folds of the garment, were also bare, and on its head it wore no other covering than a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its genial face, its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice, its unconstrained demeanour, and its joyful air. Girded round its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. Scrooge's third visitor. "You have never seen the like of me before," exclaimed the spirit. "Never," Scrooge made answer to it. Have never walked forth with the younger members of my family, meaning, for I am very young, my elder brothers born in these later years? Pursued the phantom. I don't think I have, said Scrooge. I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers, Spirit? More than 1800, said the ghost. A tremendous family to provide for, muttered Scrooge. The ghost of Christmas Present rose. Spirit, said Scrooge submissively, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learned a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told, and held it fast. Okay, so that is the end of this extract for today. Let's have a look then at some of the key lines and the key ideas throughout this extract. So, Dickens begins with a description of Scrooge waiting nervously in bed for the appearance of the second spirit, but he isn't prepared for the fact that nothing arrives when the bell tolls 1. So Dickens suggests here that Scrooge is prepared for the ghost's arrival, but he becomes uneasy when he's made to wait. This could imply that he's increasingly conscious that the spirits are there to help him, and he's anxious in case they do not come. But also, as a businessman, we know that Scrooge prefers things to follow a rational and organised path. He's made a bit uncomfortable by being subject to the spirit's whims. So when one doesn't arrive at the time that he expects it, he starts to feel a bit uneasy, a little bit anxious. Furthermore, the ghost doesn't appear straight away, but this sort of blaze of light shines onto Scrooge's bed. So this warm red light pours onto him, and it reminds us really of firelight, doesn't it? Which is symbolic of the Christmas spirit. And we know that when we go into the other room, we see the ghost there. This is the light that shines from his torch, and this is the light from the blazing fire that's lit there. And throughout the novel, the idea of a blazing fire is symbolic of generosity, of warmth, and of the Christmas spirit itself. It's everything that Scrooge lacks in his cold and dark world. So that light symbolises the warmth that over the course of the novel will grow in Scrooge, and also his ultimate turn away from darkness and towards the light, towards virtue, towards generosity, towards kindness, all of these things that he isn't at the moment. So, this light is the first sign of the appearance of the ghost of Christmas Present. As Scrooge goes towards the other room, he realises that this light is shining from an adjoining room. He hears this voice call his name, and it asks him to enter the room, and Dickens uses this short and simple sentence, "He obeyed." At this point, Dickens is illustrating to us that Scrooge is submitting, he's giving himself up to the power of the spirits. He doesn't struggle against them, he doesn't argue with them, and you might just contrast this moment with how he treats Marley's ghost when that first appears, but he obeys straight away. So we start to think as well that maybe he is seeing the value that the spirits can bring to him. He's understanding and he's recognising that they're there ultimately to help him and to bring about this transformation, which, if he does not undergo it, he will ultimately be damned to the same kind of purgatorial state that Jacob Marley finds himself in. So, his room has been completely transformed. The walls and ceiling are hung with green branches, so it looks almost like a scene from a forest. There's berries everywhere, there's food everywhere, and there's light shining back all over the place. So his room has been transformed into almost like an image from a Christmas card, a sort of idyllic Christmas scene, a woodland grove. And this is the power that the ghost of Christmas Present has to change the rooms that he is in. He spreads the Christmas spirit everywhere he goes, and so transforms the lives of the people he touches into something more festive, more Christmassy. He does this very obviously and very visually in Scrooge's home. So we have these images as well of light. The crisp leaves reflect the light back, so they're like tiny little mirrors, and there's a huge fire roaring in the hearth. So Dickens repeatedly is using this motif of light and fire, just like he does at the beginning here, talking about that streaming red, ruddy light, to represent the goodness of the Christmas spirit. This is what Scrooge could choose if he were to turn away from his life of sin and darkness and coldness. So this is the kind of delightful scene that he could create. Furthermore, we have this immense list of all of this food which is piled up all over the place, this absolute Christmas banquet. And Dickens uses this long list of food and drink to suggest a sort of generous Christmas feast. So it's at once a really joyful scene, but there's also something a little bit melancholy, a little bit sad about it. This is the kind of banquet that Scrooge could afford, given his absolutely immense wealth, yet he chooses instead to be miserly and ungenerous. So this is reminding him of what he could have if he chose to make use of his money for something a little bit more joyful. And in the middle of this scene sits the ghost of Christmas Present, who is like a giant, glorious to see, and carrying a glowing torch. This is obviously not a torch like a flashlight, but a torch as in a selection of wood and things like that lit at the top, so it's burning and blazing. So Dickens positions the ghost of Christmas Present in the centre of this glorious festive scene, and he's really like this archetypal Father Christmas kind of figure. He is the personification of Christmas. He is everything that it means to be festive put into one figure. And look at the language that Dickens uses to describe him. He is jolly and he is glorious. Jolly reflecting the joy and the happiness of the festive season. Not only that, but just like the first spirit, he is associated with light. He carries a glowing torch. And just like the first spirit's sort of candle-like head, this could be seen to symbolise truth and also goodness. He is literally shining a light on Scrooge, helping him to see things as they truly are, helping him to reflect honestly upon his own life, his own behaviour, his own morality. So this light is at once illuminating, but it's also unforgiving. Scrooge isn't allowed to remain in ignorance any longer, because this ghost is going to show him what it truly is to live in this era, what it is like to be part of Bob Cratchit's family, for example, something which Scrooge has purposefully tried to ignore up until now. And the ghost calls out to Scrooge, come in and know me better, man." So unlike Scrooge, who turns people away, who rejects them, who purposefully isolates himself, this spirit is welcoming and open, and he seems to wish to know Scrooge. He's friendly. But Scrooge is timid and hangs his head, so he won't meet the spirit's eyes. Dickens suggests here that Scrooge has already begun to change significantly. Compare this timid entrance with how defensive he was with Marley's ghost. He is uncertain in the presence of the spirit. He's uneasy, he's uncomfortable. Not only that, but he won't look this ghost in his eyes, suggesting maybe that Scrooge is beginning to feel a little bit ashamed of himself. He knows why this ghost is here, and he can't face him. He recognises that he must change, and he feels perhaps a little ashamed of his past behaviour. When the ghost introduces himself, the spirit commands Scrooge, "Look upon me," and Scrooge does so reverently, which means worshipfully. So Scrooge has respect for this spirit and he's obedient. He does exactly as he's asked. The way that the ghost's clothes hang loosely on his figure mean that his chest is bare, and Dickens writes as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. And this suggests the ghost's openness and honesty. He's not going to be concealed by any artifice. He's not going to be hidden or covered by anything. And it suggests a kind of happiness to be vulnerable as well, happiness to be open. This creature is completely content. Furthermore, the description of the ghost's face and appearance is characterised by happiness. Its genial, its friendly face, its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice. Every element of the way that its physical appearance is described suggests openness, kindness, generosity, and happiness. He exudes kindness and gentleness and joy. This is what we mean when we say this spirit is the embodiment of the Christmas spirit. He is what it means to be festive, open, kind, and generous, all of the things that Dickens values about Christmas. Not only that, he has an antique scabbard, so a sheath for a sword, but no sword is in it. And this seems to hint at the strength of the ghost. He has the capacity to carry a weapon, or perhaps once carried one. However, the fact that there is no sword and the sheath is eaten up with rust indicates that he's peaceful. He's not someone to be feared. The ghost comments that he has more than 1,800 brothers, these fellow spirits perhaps. So an extraordinarily large family, and again, this seems in keeping with his role as the personification of Christmas itself. Just like Scrooge is isolated, this ghost is surrounded and connected to many others. Scrooge, however, makes a small joke, a tremendous family to provide for, so he immediately thinks about the sort of cost implications of such a large family. However, we can see that he is starting to change his ways because he speaks to the spirits submissively, so he gives himself up to the power of this being and says, "Conduct me where you will, take me wherever you wish. I went forth last night on compulsion, so last night I was forced to go with this spirit, and I learned a lesson which is working now." So he says that he saw the benefit of what this previous spirit, the ghost of Christmas past, had to teach him. He says, "Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, if you have anything to teach me, let me profit by it." So here, Dickens is clearly portraying Scrooge's changing character. He's submissive towards the ghost rather than arguing with it or trying to hide from what it has to show him. He acknowledges that he learnt a lesson from the previous ghost and that this is working. So he's coming to recognise the error of his ways, and he understands that he must change for the better. Not only that, but his definition of profit is starting to change. He says, "If you have aught to teach me, if there's anything you're going to teach me, let me profit by it." So, whereas previously for Scrooge the word profit would have had a financial meaning, he now uses it to mean let me profit, let me benefit, let me change after I learn what you have to teach me. So he's now relating the idea of profit to moral growth, becoming a more moral person. His profit will be his spiritual betterment, the improvements in his character that will come about if this ghost teaches him like the last one did. And there begins his journey with the second of the three spirits. So in our next extract, we will have a look at the beginnings of the journey that he goes on with the ghost of Christmas Present, and we will be looking at how Dickens uses setting to display some of his ideas about inequality and the lives of the rich and the poor. Okay, thanks very much for listening. I hope that was helpful.